The moment my sister came back to the country, my husband slapped a set of divorce papers on the table. He said our marriage was over. My heart shattered. I signed through the pain. Then, pregnant with his child, I married his sworn enemy. For years later, he saw Red watching the little boy who looked just like him call his rival dad. 2 lines on the pregnancy test. I didn't even have time to feel happy. Samuel tossed a document in front of me. Tina, let's get a divorce. Sign this, and I'll give you an extra $20 million. I stared at the man in front of me, impeccably dressed in a suit, his face cold as ice. I couldn't bring myself to nod. Samuel was getting impatient. We signed a contract when we got married. It was for 3 years. We have 1 month left. If you don't agree, fine. The marriage will automatically be void in a month. But then you won't get a single cent of that extra $20 million. I took a deep breath. Samuel, what if I told you I'm pregnant? I'll admit it, I was being pathetic. Even at this point, I was trying to use a child to keep him. The Samuel family line was thin, maybe he'd give up on the divorce for the sake of a child. But his next words plunged me into an icy abyss. I had a vasectomy. The baby can't be mine. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Samuel was the only man I'd ever been with. If this child wasn't his, whose could it be? But when someone doesn't believe you, any explanation is pointless. Samuel left. I stared at the divorce papers, my mind blank. My marriage to Samuel was a cliché. 3 years ago, my sister was the one who was supposed to marry him. But right before the wedding, she left the country to chase after her true love. To save the business partnership with the Samuel family, my family made me marry him in her place. To save face, his family agreed. I'd had a crush on Samuel for 7 years, so I didn't refuse. The only one who wasn't willing was Samuel. I don't know what other people's wedding nights are like. On mine, Samuel threw a contract at me. It was the 3-year marriage agreement. After 3 years, whether I agreed or not, the contract was over. At the time, I was heartbroken and miserable. But I didn't give up. I thought if I just tried my best to be good to him, I could eventually melt his heart. My sister was gone. I was the one by his side. Sooner or later, he'd see how good I was. For 3 years, I took meticulous care of him. His stomach was sensitive, so I spent countless hours researching recipes. He had headaches and trouble sleeping, so I learned acupuncture. Looking back now, I was so naive, so innocent. Who falls in love with their maid? Forget it. Our being together was just mutual torture. With a trembling hand, I reached for a pen to sign the divorce papers. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was my mom. Tina, your sister's back. Her flight lands this afternoon. Bring Samuel over tonight for a family dinner. My mom's voice was filled with unconcealed joy. I opened my mouth, my voice a little hoarse. Why is Daisy back so suddenly? She sighed. I told her that blue-eyed guy was no good, but she insisted on marrying him. And sure enough, he showed his true colors right after they got married. Out partying every night. He'd bring people home, and he didn't even clean up his act when your sister got pregnant. He caused her to have a miscarriage. Since she chose to come back, she must have figured things out. It's good that she's figured things out. Oh, and when you see her later, don't bring up the past. We don't want to upset her. Her voice trailed off into a mumble. And then something clicked. I suddenly understood why Samuel was in such a hurry to divorce me. It was because Daisy was back. My head spun, and a strange thought flashed through my mind. It was like I was living in a book. Daisy was the main character. And I was just a disposable side character. The girl who had a crush on the male lead, married him, but then gracefully stepped aside the moment the female lead returned. Later, when Daisy found out she couldn't have children, I actually gave them my own child. Watching them live happily as a family of 3, I smiled and silently wished them well. I was horrified. Was I losing my mind? But in that moment, it was as if my love for Samuel just vanished. I put down the pen. I didn't sign. Why should I step aside the moment Daisy returns and let them have their happy ending? Before this divorce was final, I was going to make their lives miserable. I wasn't going to be some throwaway character. Even as a side character, I was going to be the villainess. I took a cab to my parents' house. Samuel and Daisy arrived together. Daisy looked more worn out than she had 3 years ago, her usual bubbly energy gone. But she was still the center of attention, just like always. My parents were fussing over her, asking if she was cold or tired. It had just rained heavily. Daisy's clothes were perfectly dry. One of Samuel's sleeves was soaked. I could almost picture him holding the umbrella over her, letting the rain drench him. When I was with Samuel, he was always walking ahead, and I was always trailing behind. You really can't compare people. I pushed down my disappointment, walked straight to Samuel's side, and said with concern, "Honey, how did your clothes get so wet?" I linked my arm through his intimately. Daisy's gaze flickered towards us, a little lost. Samuel tried to pull away, but I held on tight. "Honey, you'll catch a cold if your clothes are wet. You're the backbone of the company, we can't have you getting sick. I'll take you upstairs to change." I watched a vain pulse in his forehead as he seemed to be fighting for control. But he maintained the facade of a husband and followed me upstairs. The second we were in the room, he shook my arm off. "Don't touch me. You're my husband. What's wrong with me holding your arm?" Samuel took a deep breath. "Did you sign the divorce papers?" "No. I'm pregnant. I told you, I had a vasectomy. Are you sure you went to a real doctor? And not some quack? You've been the only man I've been with for 3 years. Don't even think about denying it," I said coldly. Samuel's face was ashen. "Tina, what's happened to you?" For the past 3 years, I had always been the image of a perfect, doting wife in front of him. Gentle, considerate, and obedient. He'd never seen me like this, sharp-tongued and covered in thorns. In reality, the gentle, considerate me was the act. I'm the type to hold a grudge and get even. Since I couldn't make him fall for me, I was damn well going to leave him bleeding. That's the least I deserved for all my years of being humble and miserable. I crossed my arms and looked at him. What's wrong with me? I'm a hell of a lot better than a guy who uses someone and then pretends he doesn't know them. Samuel was so angry he was speechless. Downstairs, I was back to being gentle and considerate. I sat next to Samuel, acting cute. "Honey, I want some fish, but it's too far. I can't reach. Honey, my water is gone. Can you get me another glass?" I kept ordering Samuel around. The expressions on both Samuel's and Daisy's faces were grim. Daisy was probably getting a stark reminder that the boy who used to follow her around was now someone else's husband. Halfway through dinner, Daisy excused herself, saying she was tired and went upstairs. Samuel couldn't take it anymore and escaped to the bathroom. "Tina, your sister just went through a breakup. Acting like that with Samuel is just going to upset her," my mom whispered, scolding me. I almost laughed. That's just how this family was. Everything always revolved around Daisy. When Daisy ran off, they made me marry her fiancé, never caring if I was happy or not. Now that Daisy was back, they only had eyes for her, seeing nothing wrong with my husband fawning over her. Daisy was like the main character of the world. As long as she was around, I was just an insignificant extra. No one cared about me. No one was concerned for me. I should have been used to it by now. I lifted my head, hiding the disappointment in my eyes, and said pitifully, "Mom, Dad, I'm pregnant, that's why I've been." As the words left my mouth, I heard the sound of a glass shattering. I looked up and saw Daisy, her hands empty, a look of shock on her face. Samuel came running out of the bathroom, grabbed my hand, and pulled me out of the house. Back home, Samuel glared at me viciously. I really am pregnant. Am I not supposed to tell anyone? Under Samuel's murderous gaze, I went to the bathroom. Thinking about Daisy's shock and Samuel's anger, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. Maybe I really did have a talent for being the villainess. The next day, I slept in until the sun was high in the sky. I glanced at the clock, it was 8. I walked out of the bedroom and saw Samuel sitting on the sofa, looking furious. Samuel is a very picky person, even about his coffee. I used to make him breakfast and brew his coffee every single morning. But now, I was done waiting on him. It felt great to sleep in. Hungry? I asked. Samuel didn't answer, but his stomach rumbled loudly. I'll order something, then. Samuel looked at me in disbelief. Before the delivery arrived, Samuel slammed the door and left. I couldn't help but give myself a pat on the back. Good thing I didn't order anything for him. In the afternoon, while I was at the spa, I got a call from Samuel's secretary. The food in the company cafeteria isn't to Samuel's liking. He hasn't eaten anything. Right. I used to pack Samuel's lunch, too. Over the years, I'd really spoiled his palate. He had no appetite for anything besides my cooking. It's fine. He'll eat when he gets hungry enough. In the evening, a message popped up on my phone. It was a picture from Daisy. In the photo was a man with a high-bridged nose and a handsome profile. It was Samuel. A moment later, the photo was deleted. Sorry, sent it to the wrong person, Daisy wrote. I ignored her. TSK, my dear sister. She always got whatever she wanted just by crooking her finger. Now she was resorting to tricks like this. The innocent angel had turned into a manipulative fox. I wasn't sad. On the contrary, I was quite pleased. In the picture, Samuel was sitting in front of a bright red, spicy hot pot. Samuel's stomach was sensitive. He had barely eaten breakfast or lunch. Eating that for dinner was practically a death sentence for him. Samuel couldn't handle spicy food. Daisy loved it. If Samuel wanted to accommodate her, he'd have to pay the price. I had a wonderful night's sleep. Sure enough, when I woke up, there were dozens of missed calls on my phone. I opened my messages, and they were all from Samuel's secretary. He's in the hospital. I leisurely got out of bed. I made some congee. After finishing my breakfast, I packed up the leftovers and headed to the hospital. Samuel was in a private luxury suite. As I approached the door, I saw him sitting on the hospital bed, his face pale. He was looking toward the door, as if he was waiting for someone. When he saw me, his expression immediately soured, and he turned his head away. I walked in. You're here. His secretary quickly took the container from my hands. Samuel has been waiting for you forever. He was so looking forward to you coming. Samuel was certainly waiting for someone, but it wasn't me. The congee you made smells amazing. Samuel is so lucky. Samuel's pale face seemed to regain a bit of color. This is just my leftovers. Seemed like a waste to throw it out, so I brought it for him, I said slowly. Even the ever-so-smooth secretary was stunned into silence. Samuel's face instantly turned a dark shade of green. Get out. I took a moment to enjoy the ugly look on Samuel's face. Seeing him unhappy made me feel better. I turned and walked out of the room. But then I saw someone standing right outside the door. He was tall, with a face just as handsome as Samuel's. I knew him. Samuel's arch-nemesis, Leo. He looked like a gentleman, but he was a total scumbag. Whatever Samuel liked, Leo had to snatch it. Leo had even been one of Daisy's devoted followers for a while. Later, after I became Samuel's wife, Leo tried to hit on me too. Sometimes I even wondered if Leo was actually in love with Samuel. I stared at him. Eavesdropping? Leo was cocky. This isn't eavesdropping. I was listening, loud and clear. Damn, Tina, you're a badass. Putting that pretentious jerk in his place. So satisfying. I looked at him, my face blank. Don't call me that, it's gross. Get lost. Tina, why are you so fiery all of a sudden? But. His charming eyes held a strange depth. This is the you I remember. What he said made no sense. I just figured he was being a slick talker and stomped hard on his foot. Hearing his pained hiss, I walked away, satisfied. I was definitely going to divorce Samuel. And I wanted that extra 20 million. I was only dragging my feet on signing to annoy Samuel and Daisy. But the baby in my belly. I hesitated for a few days, but in the end, I decided to terminate the pregnancy. I made an appointment and went to the hospital. I went through a series of tests first. The doctor looked at my results. Tina, given your physical condition, you cannot have an abortion. I was shocked. In fact, last night I dreamed about that book again. The book was called The CEO's Helpless Bride. In the dream, I was like a reader, flipping through the pages. Samuel was the male lead, Daisy was the female lead. I was a disposable character, and Leo was the villain. I was the saintly side character who offered silent blessings. Leo's fate was much worse. After going bankrupt, he ended up as a homeless man, picking through trash on the streets. The part about getting an abortion was exactly the same as the plot in the book. The doctor in the book also told me I couldn't have one. What if I insist on it? You could die. I was already hesitant to begin with. After all, this was my child, my own flesh and blood. After what the doctor said, I decided to keep the baby. But I wouldn't be giving him to Samuel and Daisy, like in the book. I was going to raise this child on my own. When I walked out of the doctor's office, I saw Leo again. Leo glanced at me, then at the obstetrics and gynecology sign on the doctor's door. Tina, you're pregnant? You're pregnant and you didn't tell me? You should have let me come with you. I may be busy, but I'd always make time to be with you and the baby. Leo said it all with such deep emotion, his words dripping with insinuation. I stomped on his foot again, grinding my heel in for good measure. I left, satisfied by the sight of his handsome face twisted in pain. My joy was short-lived. Maybe I was too happy watching Leo suffer. I lost my footing and fell down a flight of stairs. My first instinct was to shield my stomach. In the blur, I felt someone rush toward me. Then, I was lifted into someone's arms. Doctor. Doctor, come look at her, quickly. It sounded like Leo's voice. But why did it sound so anxious? That was my last hazy thought. I lost consciousness and passed out. When I woke up, I saw Leo sitting by my bed. He was on a low stool, his long legs awkwardly cramped. Seeing me awake, Leo's charming eyes flickered my way. Oh, you're awake? Tina, were you born without a cerebellum? How do you manage to fall just by walking? Leo mocked me without mercy. I was now certain of it. That anxious voice yelling for a doctor before I passed out must have been a hallucination. Suddenly, Leo's expression completely changed. Tina, you look so pale. Does it hurt somewhere? Let me blow on it for you. In the next instant, a figure inserted himself between me and Leo. Samuel grabbed Leo's hand, his face a mask of extreme fury. Leo, this is my wife, Samuel said coldly, his eyes like daggers trying to shred Leo to pieces. Oh, so Tina has a husband. I just assumed he was dead, since she was at the hospital for her appointment all by herself. Leo shot back, not giving an inch. Samuel's lips thinned as he glared at Leo. Leo wasn't intimidated at all. Get out. Samuel said coldly. TSK, Samuel, are you a broken record? Is that the only word you know? Leo taunted Samuel. He kept pushing until Samuel was on the verge of exploding, and only then did Leo leave. My mood improved. Leo was annoying, but he was pretty cute when he was pissing Samuel off. Samuel suddenly glared at me, his face grim. I touched my face and realized I had been smiling without knowing it. Leo has to have everything of mine. He's only being nice to you because you're my wife. Don't get any ideas, Samuel said icily. In that instant, a brilliant idea popped into my head. An idea that would drive Samuel insane. A troubled expression crossed my face. What am I going to do? I think I'm falling for Leo. Samuel, I'll sign the divorce papers as soon as I get home. My words did the trick. Samuel's face turned a deathly shade of green. Back home, I looked for the divorce papers. But I couldn't find them anywhere. I called Samuel. Where are the divorce papers? There was a pause on the other end before he spoke. I don't know. I'd been with Samuel for 3 years, I knew him well. He was lying. He had hidden the divorce papers. The man who had been pushing me to sign them was now hiding them so I couldn't. It seemed Samuel's feelings for Daisy weren't that deep after all. He was willing to postpone the divorce just to save his male pride. But I didn't care. Samuel wouldn't be able to hold out for much longer. In the days that followed, I ate well, drank well, and lived well. I also started planning my life after the divorce. Find a small town, open a little shop, live a quiet life. Suddenly, I got a call from my mom, telling me to come home. When I arrived, my parents and Daisy were all sitting there, their faces serious. The moment she saw me, my mom came over and took my hand. Tina, I know you haven't been happy these past few years married to Samuel. He hasn't treated you well, and he's treated you like a maid. She put on a pained expression. I suddenly wanted to laugh. So she knew all along. I used to think she just didn't care. Like when we were kids, if Daisy got so much as a scratch, they'd rush her to the hospital. But I could have a fever all night, and no one would even notice. What was crueler than that was the fact that she knew, she just didn't care. We were both her daughters, but Daisy was the apple of her eye, and I was just an unwanted burden. Tina, maybe you should just get the divorce. Her suggesting a divorce definitely wasn't for my sake. It was for. I looked at Daisy. He's right. Samuel never liked you anyway. Why torture each other? Daisy said. I spoke up. Samuel likes you, Daisy. Are you suggesting we get a divorce so he can marry you? Daisy didn't say anything, but it was obvious that's what she meant. I looked at my mom and dad. It was clear that was their plan, too. With no expectations, there was no disappointment. I stroked my belly. If we get a divorce, what about my baby? Tina, stop pretending. The baby in your belly isn't Samuel's. The only reason Samuel hasn't exposed you is to be kind. Don't push your luck, Daisy said, holding nothing back. Ha. It seemed Daisy couldn't wait any longer. $5 million, I said quietly. Daisy stunned. What? Give me $5 million, and I'll divorce Samuel. My parents doted on Daisy. The family's assets were all hers. $5 million was pocket change to her. I was going to be raising a child alone, the more money, the better. And when Samuel found out he'd been sold for $5 million, he'd be absolutely furious. 2 birds, 1 stone. Daisy gritted her teeth and nodded. Then call Samuel over. Daisy made the call. Samuel arrived quickly. Samuel, where are the divorce papers? I asked. Samuel glared at me and said in a low voice, Are you that desperate to be with Leo? Yes, I am. I can't wait. Even if I could, the baby can't. Samuel, let's get a divorce. Samuel's lips were pressed into a thin line. It was obvious he didn't want to. Samuel, since Tina is so insistent on a divorce, just do it, Daisy said. Only then did Samuel call his secretary. The divorce papers arrived soon after. I signed them without hesitation. Samuel, remember this. I'm the one who's dumping you. Oh, and don't forget to wire me my breakup fee. I signed my name, turned, and walked away without looking back. Goodbye, Samuel. I walked aimlessly down the street. I thought I wouldn't be sad. But my heart still felt like it had a hole in it. An empty, gaping hole. I had already given up on Samuel. But from this day on, I wasn't just losing Samuel, I was losing my family. In truth, they had never cared about me. It was just today that I was finally facing that fact. No one loved me, no one cared about me. I was just an insignificant side character. Suddenly, a Maybach pulled up in front of me. The door opened, and a long leg stepped out. It was the refined scoundrel himself, Leo. Leo got out of the car and blocked my path. "You're divorced?" I glared at him. How did he find out so quickly? Daisy told me. "Tina, now there's nothing stopping us from being together," Leo said with deep emotion. I was speechless. "Are you insane? You don't have to go this far just to get back at Samuel. I'm pregnant. You want to be a stepdad? Samuel's son calling me dad? Just thinking about it is awesome," Leo said, rubbing his chin. Okay, case closed. Leo really was insane. I walked around him and kept going. Leo followed behind me, listing all the benefits of marrying him. I was completely exasperated. But the sadness in my heart had faded quite a bit. I left the city where I had lived for over 20 years. I moved to a small town thousands of miles away. Strange people, strange scenery, everything was new. I wanted a fresh start. But as soon as I got off the plane, I saw a familiar figure. Leo was smiling at me. What a coincidence, Tina. You're not following me, are you? I was speechless. He had said exactly what I was about to say. I went to the house I had already bought. I had found and purchased this house online. But just as I was about to go inside, the door across the hall opened. Leo's sophisticated face appeared before me. His expression was overly dramatic. "Tina, what are you doing living across the hall from me? And you say you're not stalking me? If you have a crush on me, just say so." I went inside and slammed the door, the loud bang my only response. The house was fully furnished and move-in ready. A cleaning service had already been through. So I just did some light tidying up. I had just sat down when my phone buzzed. I picked it up, and the call immediately disconnected. It was Samuel's number. A wrong number? I just blocked him. A moment later, another unknown number called. "I'm a friend of Samuel's. He's drunk. Can you come pick him up?" In the past, when Samuel had work events and got drunk, would go get him, no matter how far. But now, Samuel and I are divorced. You should call his secretary. I hung up. And I added that number to my block list, too. Now 2 numbers were sitting in my block list. And that was just the beginning. Over the next few days, all sorts of people from Samuel's circle started calling me. One said Samuel was in the hospital with stomach pains. Another said Samuel had a cold. One was even more ridiculous, saying Samuel missed me so much he was crying. What was wrong with them? I had already given him and Daisy my blessing. I suspected these people were intentionally trying to ruin my peace. So I changed my phone number and got a new social media account. After that, I finally had some quiet days. I opened a flower shop downstairs. Welcome. I looked up and rolled my eyes at the person who had just walked in. It was Leo, dressed in a suit and tie, wearing a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, looking very dapper. Leo picked out a bouquet of roses. $99, I said. After paying with his phone, Leo handed the flowers to me. I didn't take them, so he put them in the vase on the counter himself. Leo was like a ghost I couldn't shake. He was really putting in the effort to be a father to Samuel's son. He was truly living up to his role as the great villain from the book. No wonder Samuel's fate for him was to end up picking through trash. At first, I would refuse his advances. Now, I was just numb to it. He could do whatever he wanted. "Miss Tina, your flower delivery is here." I heard the call and hurried outside to get it. Suddenly, a car lost control and sped right towards me. In that instant, my mind went completely blank. Until a figure tackled me to the ground. It took me a moment to come to my senses. It was Leo. He was always so vain, even taking out the trash, he was impeccably dressed. Now, his gold-rimmed glasses were gone, his hair was a mess, and he looked completely disheveled. But for some reason, I felt a strange sense of closeness to him. "Leo, get up, are you hurt anywhere?" I asked urgently. I'm not that clumsy. I have a black belt in Taekwondo. A little car isn't going to do anything to me." Leo rolled over and sat up, his handsome face twisting for a second. "Shit. I think my leg is broken." I quickly called 911. While we waited for the ambulance, I looked at his twisted leg, feeling helpless, my eyes turning red with panic. "It's just a small injury, I'm not gonna die," Leo said nonchalantly. Suddenly, his expression turned flustered. "Why are you crying?" "Tina. Don't cry." "Hey, I'm really fine, look, I can even jump for you." He actually tried to get up as he said it. I quickly pushed him down. "If you move again, I'm going to start bawling." He immediately froze. At the hospital, the doctors treated Leo's wound and did a full body checkup. Fortunately, only his leg was injured. And it wasn't too serious. A small surgery and 3 months of recovery would be enough. I stayed with Leo through his surgery. I hired a caregiver for him. I went to the hospital every day to bring him food. The man who was just about to jump for me was now lying in a hospital bed, looking like a damsel in distress. "Tina, I need some water." "Tina, my hand hurts so much, you have to feed me." "Tina, my shoulders are so sore, give me a massage." I didn't want to deal with him. His handsome face immediately crumpled. "My leg hurts so much. I wonder who I got injured for." I sat down by his bed and started massaging his shoulders. That's when Samuel walked in. He stood at the door of the hospital room and knocked sharply. I looked up and saw his face was dark with fury. I hadn't seen him in a while. Samuel looked much more haggard and worn out. Without a word, Samuel grabbed me and started pulling me out of the room. "Samuel, get your dirty hands off my girlfriend. Let her go, or I swear I'll fight you." Leo struggled to get out of bed as he yelled. "Stay in bed. If you get up, there's no dinner for you," I glared at him. "I'm just going to talk to Samuel for a minute. I'll be right back." Only then did Leo obediently lie back down. Samuel's expression grew even darker. He took 2 deep breaths, trying to suppress his rage. We went outside. I looked at him. "Are you here to give me an invitation to your and Daisy's wedding?" "I'm not interested in attending my ex's wedding." "Tina, I'm not marrying Daisy," Samuel cut in, his voice hoarse. "Then what do you want from me?" Samuel didn't speak. I grew impatient and turned to go back into the room. "Tina, let's get back together," Samuel finally said. "This whole time you've been gone, I can't stop thinking about you. I dream about you. I realize that I love you. It was only after you left that I finally understood my own heart." As Samuel spoke, his tone became plaintive. "Why didn't you answer my calls? My secretary called you, and you didn't pick up either." For someone as proud as Samuel, saying something like this clearly took a lot of courage. But I didn't feel moved. On the contrary, I found it laughable. A late confession is cheaper than dirt. "I'm sorry, I don't love you anymore. Besides, I have someone I like now. Please don't come and bother us." Samuel became agitated. "Tina, don't believe Leo. He doesn't love you, he's just doing this to one-up me." I let out a small laugh. "When I was sick, I called you, and you said you had to work overtime. A few days ago, when I was almost hit by a car, Leo threw himself in front of me without a second thought for his own safety. Do you really think you're in any position to say he doesn't love me?" Samuel stood there, stunned and speechless. Samuel, we're divorced. There's no going back. Go find your Daisy. With that, I turned and went back into the hospital room. Samuel just stood there. Like an abandoned child, lost and helpless. But I didn't feel a shred of pity. Everyone has to take responsibility for their own choices and actions. He was 26, not 6. No one is going to wait around forever. No one is going to put up with him forever. What's missed is missed. I walked into the room and heard Leo's boisterous voice. Tina, my leg hurts so much. Quick, come give me a kiss. A kiss will make it better. I pinched his ear. Hey. I told you to kiss my cheek, why are you kissing my mouth? We're in public. A week later, Leo was discharged from the hospital. I hired a caregiver who took care of him for 3 months. And I visited him often. 3 months later, according to the doctor, he should have been able to walk freely. But his recovery was exceptionally slow. The moment his foot touched the ground, he would start wailing and crying. Something wasn't right. He was one of those guys who looked lean in clothes but was actually ripped underneath. I'd accidentally seen him once. He had an 8-pack. It was clear he worked out a lot. How could someone in such good shape not be healed after 3 months? Tina, my leg is so sore. Quick, come give it a massage, Leo said, as usual. I suddenly clutched my stomach. Leo shot up like a rocket. Tina, what's wrong? Stomachache? I'll take you to the hospital. I stared at him, my face expressionless. Leo instantly realized his act was up. He switched to a playful grin. Wow, how did my legs suddenly get better? Is this the power of love? I reached out and pinched his ear. Leo came with me to my checkups and was there when I gave birth. The day our child was born, he hovered around the baby, clumsy yet incredibly careful. Hey little guy, say, Dada. I was a new mom, and I was clumsy. Leo grew with me. Within a few days, he was already a pro at changing diapers. When the baby was 1, his first word was mama. His second word was Dada. Leo was ecstatic for the entire day. It was the first time I'd ever seen someone so excited to be a father to another man's child. When the baby was 2, Leo and I got together. When the baby was 3, Leo and I got married, and our son was the ring bearer. The wedding was low-key, with only Leo's close family and friends invited. Leo placed the ring on my finger. I glanced over my shoulder and thought I saw a familiar figure in the crowd. I paused for a second. Then, I quickly turned my attention back to Leo, a happy smile spreading across my face. I was so lucky to have met a man who loved me in this life. I walked out of the hall. In a corner stood 2 figures, one large and one small. I walked over, feeling a little nervous. Samuel was handing a piece of candy to an adorable, chubby-cheeked little boy. The little boy's features hadn't fully formed yet, but he looked so much like Samuel, he was clearly a miniature version of him. The little boy didn't take the candy. Instead, he said in his sweet little kid voice, "My mommy and daddy said I can't take things from strangers." Samuel's hand froze in mid-air, and his eyes visibly reddened. I took the little boy's hand. Leo walked over. I passed the boy to Leo. "Go play with daddy." Leo was a little reluctant, looking at Samuel with suspicion. I gave him a reassuring look. Only then did Leo take our son's hand and walk away. Tina. In these 4 years, Samuel had aged a lot. He never married Daisy. Daisy went back abroad and got back together with her ex-husband, continuing their cycle of mutual torture. Samuel never remarried. I heard he started drinking a lot and let his life fall apart. His career also took a nosedive. Maybe it was the butterfly effect. Because I didn't choose to be a self-sacrificing doormat, everything had changed. Things didn't follow the plot of the novel. That child. Samuel's voice was urgent. It doesn't matter anymore. Samuel, don't show up in my life again. Otherwise, I'll make sure you can never find me. After I said my piece, I turned and walked away. Behind me, the man let out a choked sob. But I didn't look back. Instead, I walked, step by step, toward the man I loved. I remembered the first time I met Leo. It was shortly after my wedding to Samuel. He stopped me. "Hey, haven't we met before? Maybe in a past life?" Those memories, which I once thought were ridiculous and had buried deep down, became sweet after Leo and I got together. I often use it to tease him now, laughing at how cheesy he was. Leo would always grab me for a long kiss, leaving me breathless. "Tina, actually, we really did meet in a past life. You just forgot. But it's okay. I remember for the both of us." Leo's epilogue. My name is Leo. I had a childhood sweetheart named Tina. We grew up together. Same kindergarten, same elementary school, same high school. For college, she chose a school in the South. Her grades were too good. No matter how hard I tried, the best I could do was get into a school in the same city as her. The two schools were on opposite ends of the city, north and south. I often took the bus for hours just to see her. But as long as I could see her, the long ride didn't matter. In our junior year, I saw her less. I had started a business and needed to make money. I wanted to propose to her right after graduation so we could have a small home in this city. I got lucky. A big company invested in my project. By the time I graduated, I had saved enough for a down payment on a house. But on the day I went to propose to her, ring in hand, I watched as she was hit by a large truck. In that moment, my world turned red. Even after watching them cover her with a white sheet, I couldn't believe my girl was gone. I started searching for her all over the world. My friends all said I was crazy. I knew I wasn't. I was certain that my girl was out there somewhere, waiting for me. I went from city to city, looking for her. Then one day, I felt like I couldn't go on. I lay down in a forest, letting the leaves fall on my face. My vision started to blur. Faintly, the bright sunlight seemed to form into a familiar shape. My girl was reaching her hand out to me. She had come to get me. I smiled. When I woke up again, I found myself lying in a luxurious bed. I was me. But I also wasn't me. My name was Leo, born into one of the city's two most prominent families. I had a sworn enemy named Samuel. My purpose in life, it seemed, was to cause trouble for Samuel. If Samuel was unhappy, I was happy. I always felt like I had forgotten something very important. Until one day, I saw a girl. She was staring at Samuel with a gentle look in her eyes. She looked strangely familiar. My legs moved on their own. "Hey, haven't we met before? Maybe in a past life?" The girl glared at me and ran away. And then, my lost memories began to resurface. A spark of joy ignited in my heart. The joy spread through my whole body. It felt like I could fly. "My girl. I found you."